Hi, my name is Polly Lowe. I'm the Director of Admissions for Classics and Ancient History. This video talks about the ancient languages, Latin and Greek, how they fit into our programmes, how we teach them, and how you might choose to study them if you come to do one of our degrees. So first things first, Latin or Greek, or both, are compulsory on our BA Classics. So if you're taking that degree programme, you are required, as part of the conditions of the programme, the regulations, to study one or both of the ancient languages all the way through your degree. If you're taking BA Ancient History or BA Classical Civilization, there is space in the programme for you to take either or both of the languages, but it's not a requirement. So that's there for you to consider if it makes sense for you. If it's something you want to pursue, we'll support you to do it, but it's not a requirement. On the joint honours degrees, there is space from the second year to fit ancient languages into the programme, because the joint honours programmes are already quite full with both halves of your degree. There isn't space easily in the first year, although it's something we could discuss if you're absolutely committed to doing it. But there is space from year 2 onwards. If that's something you want to pursue, that might be something it's worth getting in touch with us to discuss what your options might be. The main ancient languages we teach are Latin and Greek. We're normally able to offer teaching in Akkadian in your second or third year. That's something we hope to be able to continue to offer. Again, that's something that we'd be happy to discuss with you. It's quite a distinctive strength of the Classics department in Durham. Many, perhaps even any other UK universities offer this. Biblical Hebrew isn't taught in our department, but is taught in the theology department, and quite a few of our students who have particular interest in the languages choose to take Hebrew over in theology. And again, that's very straightforward to fit into the degree. There's lots of space for you to do that. What do the courses involve? So we teach courses at 4 levels in Latin and Greek. Something that I really want to emphasise is that we teach beginners Latin and beginners Greek, and those are real beginners courses. So we don't assume any prior knowledge. Secretly not beginners courses. You can come through the door knowing not a single word of Latin or Greek, and we will teach you, and we will get you up to some way beyond A-level standard in 1 year, in your first year of learning the language. So they're intensive courses, they're challenging and demanding courses, but they're hugely satisfying courses, and they get you to a point where you can read real Latin, real Greek by the end of 1 year of study. Intermediate level is, as the name suggests, intermediate. It's for people who've got background, usually A-level or equivalent in the language. So some of that course is about consolidation. It's about going over stuff that you've already covered, but making sure that it's really secure. But it's also a course which starts you reading ancient texts, usually some prose and some verse set texts. And then at advanced and higher levels, we really get into the details of using our language knowledge. So reading texts, a whole range of Greek and Latin texts, prose texts, verse texts. I can't tell you now what those texts are because we change them very regularly, partly to make sure we're not repeating stuff that you might already have studied at school, also to reflect the interest of the people teaching them. They're really sort of research-led courses in many cases, these. Which of those courses would you be taking? As I've already said, if you haven't studied the languages before, and that's usually about half of the students who come to us in any 1 year, then you would start at beginners level. And then if you started at beginners in your first year, progress to intermediate in your second year, and be at advanced level in your third year. So just to take an example, advanced Greek this year, which I taught in one of the prose courses, we were reading Thucydides in advanced Greek. So you would be reading complex, challenging, exciting texts by the time you got to the end of your degree. If you come to us with A-level or equivalent, you would normally start at intermediate, progress to advanced, and then be taking the higher course in your final year. It may be worth saying that unless you're on BA Classics, you don't have to start with languages in your first year. So if you're on Ancient History, Classical Civilization, one of the joint degrees, you can start beginners in your second year, or in fact even in your third year. You can study one language or both languages And something which is a fairly common pattern on all of our degree programmes is for people to start one language in their first year and then pick up a second language in their second year. So you might want to start with Greek, for example, in your first year, then continue with Greek in your second year, but then also start Latin in your second year. So you would end up studying both languages, but at slightly different speeds through your degree. So there's a lot of flexibility in how you combine the languages and how you choose which you choose to prioritise. How do we teach and assess our language modules? So the beginners course, as I've already said, is very intensive. Quite a lot of contact hours, so usually 4 hours a week of teaching. That's our normal model for teaching beginners languages. And as I guess is appropriate for a beginners course, we want to check that you really know your stuff. So the assessment is primarily through exams. So you'd have 2 exams assessing your competence in the language. Intermediate, slightly less intensive in terms of classroom time because you can do a bit more sort of under your own steam. You can do more independent work by the time you get to intermediate. There's more reading involved. But still quite a lot, 3 or 4 hours a week of reading and grammar classes, reflecting the sort of double aims of the course. Assessment is partly by coursework because you're now getting into interpreting and analysing the language, so that's better assessed by an essay, but then there's also a final exam as well. And then at advanced and higher, again, less classroom time because you can do more independently by this point, and that is the point of your university degree, is to get you to be an independent learner. So independent reading, but then consolidated with at least 2 hours classroom time every week. And then again, the assessment is a mixture of essay work and exam work. So there's a steady progression over the set of the language programmes that we offer. If you want to find out more, particularly about how the language modules fit into the degree, have a look at our website. You'll find out much more there. More about our programmes in general on our website or on the admissions website.